2 seconds. 2 seconds! You are not ready for what our new unique ring has done to Ball Lightning. Hello, my fellow sorcerers. Today is a good day. Today is a happy day. Today is a day the best build on the best class almost doubles in power thanks to one new unique item. Seriously, I currently have the ring unequipped, empty slot. Ball Lightning hits for about 90 to 100,000 at the top end. If I put the ring back on, well, Ball Lightning will now hit for around the 200,000 mark. Yeah! Tal Rasha's Iridescent loop. This thing is beautiful. It's boring, technically, because it's just more numbers. It's not like a fun omni-power effect, but, well, when it's as many numbers as it is, perhaps it no longer is anything close to boring, because I cannot convey nor express nor stress enough how much more powerful this and all the changes that I have made to maximize it make, well, this. You are already seeing a tier 99, because I cannot get it to actually give me a tier 100 for the life of me, be completed, including a butcher spawn, in less than 1 minute and 30 seconds. You are seeing Uber Lilith killed in about 4 seconds, if you ignore all of her mandatory flying around waiting for it to die time. You are seeing Uber Duriel scaled to 3 players yet soloed by me, killed in seconds. I just really want to get across, really stress, that you need to get out there, go kill Varshan, and get this ring. Because it is going to do special things. Not just for Ball Lightning, but essentially every sorcerer build. Welcome, then, properly to the new, best, ultimate, perfect, highest damage, all of the words that make your brain feel good to hear version of Ball Lightning that truly reigns supreme and is now so far and above everything else in the game. I mean, it's honestly unfair on every other build that exists. So, we are now, as you have been seeing, down to just Ball Lightning on the bars. There is no Clash. That is for 2 main reasons. The new ring forces us to have an extra resource generation affix on it. That, coupled with a required vampiric power change to make it fully shine, means we can no longer afford to do the little Lash and Moonrise dip. So we just cast Ball Lightning, and with that and with the ring, as I said, there is quite a few little changes to make it better than ever in this new form. And even so, we still have infinite mana despite casting Ball Lightnings at near capped attack speed. It's kinda silly. Essentially, we now get to do up to 60% multiplicative more damage permanently on everything, on top of another 40% non-physical damage for free, which is, in a vacuum, our single most valuable damage increasing stat, especially in Season 2, and, well, the other affixes ain't too shabby either. I really don't understand why we got this ring, but I am not complaining, and neither will you be when you see how it all now comes together to make us sorcerers truly the gods of Diablo 4. So I'll Tal Rasha to the top of the skill tree and get this thing going. I'm sorry. 2 points into Firebolt for both getting to core and for our first enchantment slot, as burning crit and Paragon synergy is simply too much damage to ignore when we have nearly 100% crit chance. Over to said cores then, it is Chain Lightning down to Destructive. have. This just gives us a load more crackling energy around the place, which is more infinitum mana, and that's really nice, and it makes our second enchantment slot so we keep firing out free chain lightnings while spamming ball lightning. This does a couple powerful things for us that we will get to, though I'm sure if you are an avid ball lightninger, you already know. Then we get 3 into Devastation, as we want to reach a certain breakpoint of total mana that I will get into. If you can reach it without this, well then you can reassign them, but again, we'll talk more on that later. And then 3 in Elemental Dominance, just to get 9% more damage out on our lightning. Then to your defensives. Grab yourself Flame Shield, and then take it to Enhanced, and then you can choose either Shimmering or Mystical. It really is kind of personal preference, and you will get some goodness out of both. I don't think mana is an issue, so I'd rather have the heal personally. Then get your Teleport and take it to the sweet constant damage reduction, as we will of course be spamming it. Then get either Ice Armor for just a little bit of extra tankiness and just an extra button to press. Honestly, the last couple of buttons on your bars really sort of don't matter. You really are just having it there so it's not technically empty. And in that regard, it is just Ice Armor or Frost Nova. We don't need vulnerable help, we don't need mana help, and we're stunning everything with Raiment, so we don't really need the CC help. So essentially, just choose between Ice Armor and Frost Nova, and well, move on with your merry way. I kinda lean Ice Armor just to have a little bit of extra tankiness if I'm pushing harder dungeons. Then 1 rank in Elemental Attunement, just so it can happen, and then max out your Glass Cannon, as we are more than tanky enough to run it, and it is a big permanent increase. Over to Conjuration, where we get the usual double defensives of protection for constant nice barriers and all the synergies that come from that, and then a permanent 21% damage reduction. You want to get 3 out of 3 Conjuration Mastery, both for all of the lightning spears that get summoned during your unstable currents, and because we will be regularly putting out an Ice Blades. This is important. We have to have Ice Blades because we need a source of cold damage for the new ring, and this is by far and away the best and easiest way to get that. Then we might as well go and grab summoned Ice Blades just to help with cooldown reduction for mainly teleport and unstable currents, though truthfully these two are 2 of the weaker points, and if you want to reassign them, you certainly can. Over to Mastery, where we get Devouring Blaze, half the reason we have the Firebolt enchantment, and then 5 out of 5 Ball Lightning, the star of not just the Sorcerer show, but let's be honest, the Season 2 show. Take it to Enhanced, which absolutely hypercharges it in Season of Attack Speed, and then Wizards, so we have a sea of crackling energy to give us infinite mana and infinite pulsing cooldown reduction, which is very, very lovely. Get Static Discharge to get Invigorating Conduit for said infinite mana, and then move over to your ultimate, where we get Unstable Currents, which just makes everything go nuts, and the extra attack speed is a big reason why that is, and then we might as well just have faster pulsing for more cooldown reduction while it's on. Grab yourself Coursing Currents just to get the permanent 15% damage reduction from Electrocution. It is very, very helpful to have. Then we get ourselves Overflowing Energy, so all of our crackling energy resets the cooldown on both Unstable Currents, but arguably more important, Teleport to just move through the dungeon faster, clear quicker, and we group stun people more with Raiment. If you are doing particularly hard content, or you are doing a boss that you don't really need to crackle against very often, then you can switch it to Via's Mastery, as it technically will help you out a little bit more, so that's something to think about, just a quick point swap before you fight like Lilith or Duriel, for example. Other than that then, you are set and ready to go. And what does go look like? Well, first let's talk gear before we get in how to play and how to capitalize on the ring. We want then, aspect-wise, the following. On your dagger, and specifically do get a dagger, we no longer need or care about lucky hit, so a wand is sort of pointless. We might as well get that sweet extra 30% damage to close enemies, so yeah, get a dagger. And on it, conceited, for more damage while we have a barrier. We always have a barrier. This is just a nice permanent bump. Then we want that lovely gravitational, which makes this all possible, making the ball lightnings rotate and do more damage on top of it. It's just absurd. Then we want elementalist, so we get that sweet crit damage when we cast above 100 mana, which we will be doing most of the time. Then on your gloves, you want accelerating. This is half the reason we have the chain lightning enchant, as when it shoots out and crits, and it will crit, this will trigger and keep you up with a permanent up to 25% attack speed boost, which is lovely. 25% more ball lightnings cast, and they're ticking 50% faster. Then on your helmet, we want ever living to take a whole load less damage from vulnerable and crowd controlled enemies, and vulnerable and crowd control describes every single enemy always on your screen, so this works well. On your necklace, finally then, is where you want your disobedience. This ticks up so quickly thanks to ball lightning, and you will just sit at a ton of armor. Once this is fully on, my 6.7k almost touches 13k, which is about the sweet spot you want for a tier 100, and works nicely because of that. Uniques wise then, you want Esu's Heirloom for that crit strike damage, the movement speed, and the crit chance. Just passively, it's giving us nearly 13%, and when you get the movement speed, it goes up to 35. You really are 100% crit chancing this most of the time. Then we want Tybalt's Will, of course, as the extra damage is nice, but mainly it means that when we're spamming ball lightning and then we teleport, boom, we get a load of mana back to keep spamming it, and the same when we do Flame Shield, boom, a load of mana back to keep spamming it. It does wonders. Then Raiment, of course, Raiment, the group in stun on top of your ball lightnings, and now everything's already dead before you've even blinked. It is just brilliant. If you are facing a particularly easy dungeon or open world, then feel free to swap your helmet for Godslayer, as it will do a bit better for you, but it's certainly not necessary. And then, lastly, Tal Rasha's Iridescent Loop. This is magnificent. The affixes are amazing. Extra non-physical damage is amazing. There's a reason we get so much of it in the Paragon tree, and getting more on a free affix ring unique, it's brilliant. But of course, we care about the effect. For each type of elemental damage, you get 12.5%, or at least my roll, but up to 15% multiplicative damage. This adds up quickly. Literally. We're gonna slightly detour to Vampiric powers, and then we'll get to maxing out Tal Rashas, I promise. Vampiric powers is very much relevant to that. First and foremost, get yourself Accursed Touch, so everything has the Vampiric curse, and because of Prey on the Weak, it is now vulnerable, so your ever-living aspect keeps you alive, and everyone just takes way more damage. These two are just so good in tandem, and honestly too good to pass up. Then you want Ravenous for that massive attack speed steroid, just all of the time, the best Vampiric power, and then Domination for more damage to stunned enemies, so the people that you Raiment in just get deleted even deletier. Technically, if you're doing a boss, this doesn't really help because you'll kill it before you stagger it, so feel free to put on any replacement Vampiric power that you would like, either something like Sanguine Brace if you want to die less, or Anticipation if you want more unstable currents, or, as I say, anything. I want to do a little shout out to Feed the Coven, as it does give you a bit of mana, and it's a free 10% multiplicative more damage from your Ice Blades and your Lightning Spears, so it's not a horrible choice. Now, I do want to justify why we're not Anticipation anymore for the reduction on unstable currents. The simple fact of the matter is we need a new Vampiric power in the form of Infection. We'll get to that. So what do we drop out of the previous selection? Well, we've got rid of Moonrise to make room, because that's why we don't have our Clash anymore, but we still kind of don't need the unstable currents uptime when we're just casting ball lightning. We needed more unstable currents when we did have our Clash mixed in because we were triggering more random shock skills, but when we're just casting Ball Lightning, we're at kind of maximum damage all the time anyway. Don't get me wrong, this is a massive amp while it's active, but it's no longer like key, so we can afford to just drop the cooldown on it, especially as the more ultimate skill damage doesn't work on it anyway, and get something that's just going to be a little bit more helpful all of the time. So, Infection then. This is important because it deals poison damage. You hit something 8 times, which happens very quickly with how fast Ball Lightning ticks, and then they explode for poison. The actual poison explosion damage is kind of pathetic and doesn't really matter at all. It's the fact that it is poison. And on that note then, let's talk Tal Rashas. Every unique element then, we want to basically permanently sit at that 60% multiplicative damage increase because it's nutty cuckoo bananas. We get lightning, obviously, because we're just always doing lightning damage, and we get fire from our Firebolt enchantment and our Flame Shield. So if we just use a Ball Lightning, we're already at 2 stacks. And as you see, any type of damage refreshes all the stacks, so we only need to get to 4 stacks once, and then lightning will keep it going. So our Ice Blades that we took adds to 3, and now we have 3 stacks. That's all well and good. But if we then add in our lovely Infection, so it will start detonating poison damage, you can see we now have 4 stacks. So the fact that this Vampiric power adds a stack of Tal Rashas is powerful enough that we use this Vampiric power to basically read Infection. Gives an extra stack of Tal Rashas. Okay, that's all, and that is good enough because this really is that big of a damage amp. It is a shame that we have no access to shadow damage, or you can bet we would be using it and getting all 5 stacks. On that note then, playing this build is very easy and straightforward, and the only thing that I would recommend is you don't put Ball Lightning on your left click that's also move, because you'll actually cast it slower than if you give it its own dedicated button like I have in right click, where I can just hammer it and get them out, but most importantly do it while still progressing and moving. So I can just do stuff like this to keep sliding along while casting. I found it much more awkward if I had Ball Lightning on left, so I've just completely got rid of left click and made it purely movement, so I've just got 1 through 5 for the other abilities, and I would recommend you do the same, as it makes it flow and play much easier and, more importantly, quicker. So Flame Shield, whenever you're in danger, just put it on and now you're fine. Same with Ice Armor. Teleport through the dungeon and onto enemies, stun them, group them, that's all good. Use your Unstable Currents whenever there's a big group or a boss and enjoy the results. The rest of the time, spam your Ball Lightning, use your Ice Blades on cooldown, and then just kind of gently drift around the enemies, picking up all of your crackling energy, back and forth, dashing through them. Use your dodge on cooldown as it's a damage increase and a speed increase. Use your teleport, your Flame Shield, get more mana from Tibalt's, and just, well, hit all of the keys, basically. It couldn't be more straightforward, especially considering how powerful it is. So let's talk gems and affixes to look out for then. Crit damage to vulnerable on your weapons, health in your armor, and armor in your jewelry. We end up at quite a healthy, almost perfect all resist. This is certainly good enough, and that is helped by having an extra lot of all resist from our new ring. Our crit chance sitting at a lovely 50%, and that's put up to almost 90 from Elementalists, so yeah, crit strike damage absolutely amped. And then we have almost 50% mana generation, which is really good. It would be more had I not got a minimum roll on my ring, which is very sad. Movement speed, you want to be approaching 150, cooldown at least about 30, and then you're kind of ready to go. So specifically then, affixes, you want the following: critical strike chance, ranks of Ball Lightning, Glass Cannon or Devouring Blaze, attack speed, resource generation, mana cost down. Then you want critical strike damage, both normal and with lightning, cooldown reduction, movement speed, and then your general stuff like vulnerable damage, close damage, intelligence, so on and so forth. enough, and you will be looking very, very good to go. Make sure to get maximum life wherever you can, and percent total armor on your helmet. Technically, the vulnerable damage on this ring should be max life, but I have just not got lucky with the rerolling yet, so I will eventually when I finally get more Forgotten Souls. All that remains then is our Paragon board, and now I am level 100, it is full and complete for you. So, head up and basically match me point for point. The core rare nodes are obviously gotten on your first board, and then your first glyph is Elementalist, essentially a mini Tal Rashas and a huge amp to the all-important non-physical damage, and the extra all resist is nice too. Once I get this to level 21, that will fully fill out my 70% all resist in everything, coupled with the glyph here too. In any case, head up and get our second board, which is our Enchantment Master board. Here we get the 3 really important, potent rare nodes, Elemental Balance, Elementalist, and Ruinous, for just shed loads of non-physical damage in this sort of curvy formation. Then we go over and get the glyph slot and Erudite 2 for more all resist, and in this glyph we want Reinforced, both to amp the non-physical damage, the intelligence, and the all resist, and to give us essentially a permanent 15% damage reduction, as we always have a barrier. Then we go over to the right and get yourself the Burning Instinct board, one of the ways we capitalize off that Firebolt enchantment, and it adds a lot of damage. Come straight down, grab Cinders alongside Smoldering Embers, both for the damage reduction and the damage itself, get our glyph slot, which will get Destruction, and then with that get every single bit of dexterity that is in range, and get it to level 15 so you have a bigger range as soon as possible. This is such a colossal increase to your damage. The extra 12% multiplicative is very neat too. Then go up here and get Kindling along with the magic nodes around it for even more burning damage. Then we go down into our next board, which is the Static Surge board. This is a straight shot, veer off to the right to get your extra maximum mana and more damage to stunned enemies, and then eventually we will continue right into the next board. But for now, head down and left to the glyph slot, where we will put Territorial. Get this to level 15, activate it with Dex, and enjoy another 15% damage reduction, and the extra damage to close is very nice too. This really does make a big difference to your survivability, and it's why things just won't kill you anymore, even in tier 100s, well, coupled with everything else too. Now, we don't need this because the Teleintelligence is nice, but it's not worth the couple points to get to it. We don't need the lightning resist, and we don't need the int to activate a glyph, so we can just kind of save here. But do get Incapacitate for more damage to stunned and everything around it, in order to then go up here and left, down, and then over to the middle to get Static Surge. This is the other reason we have the Chain Lightning enchant, as it means whenever it pops off, we get 10% of our mana back and extra vulnerable uptime, so it's really, really lovely and synergistic, and the effect certainly is felt. Then we can go a little bit further down and get Overwhelming for even more damage to stunned enemies, and basically this is all what turns the Raiment Teleport with Ball Lightnings around you into just the instant delete pack of enemies button. So we then eventually go down here to get to the next board too, and indeed downwards is where we want to go before we go over here and right. So take it down and grab the Ceaseless Conduit board. We're not doing a crazy amount here, but what we do have is important. We want to head over to the glyph slot in this path, so you pass through these 2 dexterities, and get Flame Feeder. Essentially a mandatory glyph if you're going to run the Firebolt enchantment and Burning Synergy, and for good reason. It's a big damage increase, especially the permanent extra 10% multiplicative. Then head over to the right, get the extra % lightning damage, as it is nice to have, and we are looking good. The dex will will help activate the glyph too. So, now we go up and right out of our static surge, and this board is our vulnerable board, the Frigid Fate board. So, head straight towards this magic node here, and then down to the glyph, where we will put Adept finally, to make our ball lightning even bigger, and do bigger numbers too. And this is the amazingly best place for it, because we have to so neatly pass through this intelligence to get here without wasting points, and that's what's activating it. We also then go over to chilling for the extra intelligence to finish activating it, even though we don't really need the cold resist. Then we go up, get weakness for a little bit more vulnerable damage, and then finally we curve all the way round and get Frigid Fate. Currently, this is at an extra 25% multiplicative damage, and enemies are always vulnerable, so it's just kind of all of the time. This is especially worthwhile grabbing now because of all the extra non-physical damage we're getting from the ring, and because we're getting so much from our board too, it really does amp up this legendary node, despite us not really getting specifically cold damage, a lot. 25% is nice to have, and the best use of our remaining points. So that is the Paragon board then. I will give you a slow little pan over it so you can follow it point for point, and it really does have quite the impact. I'm very, very happy with this layout. Now, let's quickly address why these mana nodes are actually so important. Ball Lightning, for me, costs 43 mana. Whatever it costs for you, add that to 100, and that's how much max mana you want to have. So I have 144, so I have exactly enough +1, and the reason for that is you want to be able to cast exactly 2 Ball Lightnings without dropping below 100 mana, as this really smooths out the elemental aspect. We are gaining mana all the time, but having this opening ability to do 2 above 100 is really potent, so that's something to think about and aim for, and it's why I do have 3 out of 3 in Devastation here to make it happen. If you have more max mana than me from other sources, well, then you can respend these points. It also helps to have a +20 roll onto bolts, so your mileage may vary there too, but it's something to aim for. And there we have it, everybody. That is your Ball Lightning all grown up in its final general potent form for just, well, destroying every bit of content in the game effortlessly. I cannot believe that any build has ever been allowed to get this strong relative to the content available, but I'm not complaining because it's ridiculously fun, and I will always maintain that Season 2 being the season of the Sorcerer after everything we've dealt with before is very much deserved. But look out for future builds. We'll be covering Ice Shards and hopefully a few other little interesting ones that I'm really trying to make work, and I am almost there on, and I really can't wait to share it. But until then, yeah, enjoy this new ring. Like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below. And until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world our stage. Goodbye.